Hey, what up? It's Brad with Home Love Construction, and I wanted to take this time to do a little, if you've watched our channel before, you'll know this is a little reboot, but for those of you who haven't heard me talk about this before, I want to talk about employees versus subcontractors. When it comes to a general contractor, they can do one of two things. Either they can go out and hire a bunch of dudes to go, and women, excuse me, a bunch of people, let's say that, a bunch of individuals, human beings, to go and do work, or they can hire companies that then have employees underneath them to go and do the work. And there's a lot of contractors that do it the way of having employees, and there's a lot of contractors that do it the way of having just subcontractor crews working for them. And so I want to just kind of lay out the pros and cons of each, and be sure you watch till the end, because at the end I'll actually give you my straight up opinion on which is the better system and which we use at Home Love Construction. But just so that you know, you may not be in the Tampa Bay area, you may not be able to use us. I want to explain how each one works, why neither is like a scam, neither is a gimmick. Like, there are good reasons for having either one of those, and it's a preference of the owner of the company. So let's dive into it. So first, let's talk about having employees. So having employees as a general contractor means that you employ people to do the trades that are covered by your license. So what that does not mean is, it does not mean that the general contractor is having people doing plumbing, HVAC, or electrical in the state of Florida, because those are not covered by a general contractor's license. If you get caught doing that, you get a big trouble and your insurance doesn't cover it if there's a mess up. So that said, the things like the concrete, the block walls, the framing, the roof, sometimes the roofing, if you built the structure, can be done by the GC. Drywall, trim, cabinets, tile, paint, flooring, all that other stuff that's not covered by a specialty license, the contractor would hire people who have some experience in doing one or many of those. And those people are actually relatively abundant. There's a lot of people who maybe in their younger days or as they're growing up have done a lot of these different trades, and they've learned it. And so they're kind of a bit of a jack of all trades. That's who these general contractors hire. And that's really the employee route. So let's kind of talk about the pros and cons of that. The pros are that they have full 100% control of that schedule. Aside from the employees literally not coming in, which, by the way, secret, it's going to be one of the cons. But aside from the employees actually not showing up, you have full control over the schedule. So if Miss Susie, really has to have her bathroom done by Thanksgiving, they pour it all on and they get it done by Thanksgiving, but it doesn't allow them necessarily to manage as many other things or get as many other projects done that maybe they're committed to because people like them. So that said, that's one of the biggest pros, is you have full control. The other thing is, you do have more control over who's actually working for you. When you employ all the people, you know everybody that's going to be on your job site. So the other system doesn't necessarily have that, because your subcontractors could be hiring people. You can't vet all of their employees. You can really only vet the ownership and management. A pro of having the employee system is that you can make sure that everybody meets your standards. And so it gives you a little bit more control over the whole, the whole thing. So that's another pro. And I'd say like the third pro is, in a lot of instances, and by the way, this is not always, I'll say this one. The other two, I'd say that's pretty much always. This one's not 100%, but a lot of times for the owner, they can sometimes charge a lower price if they're doing something in-house, because they're not paying for double management. That does sometimes result in cost savings, but we're going to get into the cons here in a minute. I think that is probably the least valuable pro on the side of using actual employees to fulfill your work. And by the way, if you hear me talk about fulfillment, or how does a company fulfill their work, or what's the fulfillment look like, I'm talking about, do they hire in-house, or do they basically hire subcontractors to do their work for them? That's the fulfillment side of it. And so let's talk about the cons of using employees in-house to fulfill general contracting scopes. And by the way, we're talking about room additions, whole home remodels, maybe even building a whole home, maybe multiple bathroom remodels, big renovation projects like that. So on the cons of having in-house employees, you have, in my opinion, there's some pretty important ones to realize. One is that the contractor is not going to be as hard-nosed And by hard-nosed, I mean really demanding and exacting in his standards. He's not going to be as demanding of his employees as he would be with subcontractors, because with employees, he's dealing with someone who's not in a business mindset and doesn't want to take as much responsibility for their output. So they're actually not able to be as stringent with employees. I've actually experienced this myself. And so, you know, if someone can't really come down hard on a tradesperson if they're not doing their job correctly, there's less of a guarantee that they're going to do their job correctly. So that's one of the cons, is it's not that there isn't as much accountability, but there can be a hesitancy on the part of the owner to implement as much accountability because they have to continue working with that person. It's harder to fire somebody and rehire them if they're on their staff versus hiring or firing a vendor. That tends to be a lot easier and a quicker process, less baggage attached to it. So that's one of the cons. Another con is that you, as the homeowner, right, you are now subject to the employees' schedule, their lives, and any baggage that may come along with that, anything that comes along with their personal life and stuff like that. So I mean, think about it. If you're thinking about the average construction worker, right, some of them don't necessarily have a stable vehicle situation. If they have a vehicle and they have a significant other, they're probably both using that vehicle, right? They likely have children. And a lot of them, the fourth one is that I have found that a lot of construction people tend to get ill more often because they're just doing something that's very strenuous on the body. Somebody who's doing something that's strenuous on the body and doesn't take as much time as like an athlete to take care of themselves and recover and stuff like that, they tend to get worn down more often. They tend to get sick a little more often, and that can lead to them missing more days of work. So realize that you are subject to that if you hire a company that is employing all of the people in-house, okay? And so really, there's pros and cons to this, really. This video is not about this way is right, this way is wrong. Obviously, we have an answer that I want you to keep watching for as to what we think the best way to do it is, but there really are some pros to employing people. And one last one I want to throw on this before we move on to the subcontractor option is that when you work with a company that employs actual people, right, not just necessarily subcontractors, you actually become close and you bond with those people who worked on your project for the last 3, 6, 9 months. In the case of some large projects, you get really close with those people and you come to appreciate them because of all the hard work that they did in your home. So I will say that there is kind of like a heartfelt, kind of nice reason to hire a company like that. And it's because you will literally become close with the employees, on an emotional level and on a family level. So that said, let's talk about the other side of this, which is the subcontractor side. And so this is where a lot of contractors tend to go as they scale up and as quality control becomes more important and they want to do less management of, they want to do less herding cats, essentially, and they want to deal with more business people. So let's look at the pros of using subcontractors in order to do your delivery in a contracting job. So the first one is the accountability. When you hire a company to do something, whether it's a consumer or a general contractor, when you hire a company, there is a set expectation, usually contractual, that company then has to live up to in exchange for you changing money with them, right? That's the exchange. It's very clearly defined. A subcontractor is highly likely to understand that and abide by that and be very mindful of that as they're going about their duties on the job site. So they're going to be held accountable to a much higher level because the general contractor, quite simply because they can hold them to a higher level, because they understand that if they don't fulfill what they agreed to do as a part of the agreement with the general contractor, they're not getting paid. For the employees, you have to pay them. You are legally obligated. If someone worked on a job site, you are legally obligated to pay them. And they don't have a legal obligation to do warranty fixes or anything like that. A subcontractor does. So there's accountability in the contract and there's even accountability to warranty issues. Another pro of using subcontractors is it actually opens you up to a larger pool of labor because all of your subcontractors are hiring multiple people. You can now mix and match and you can use different subcontractors. Obviously they have to meet your standards for what's acceptable for work quality, but you can now then move things around, and you can actually accomplish more in a shorter period of time as a general contractor, which makes you more prosperous as a company. It allows you to offer things like what we do, where we do a 5-year warranty, because we're doing enough work that it makes sense, and we have enough quality control that we can actually pay for out of our overhead, and we can afford that. So we can make sure that our projects actually deserve having a 5-year warranty. We can do that because of our scale. And kind of finally, the last pro of doing that is that the schedule tends to be locked in once it's there, but it does tend to be a little more spread out. What you'll notice in and I guess this is kind of a pro and a con, is the schedule is dependable, but there's some spread outness to it. So let me hit the dependability first. When a subcontractor says that they're going to go, like let's say a plumber or like let's say a tile crew, when they say they're going to go and do a job and they put it on their calendar, they don't tend to mistakenly overbook that. Once they put you in their calendar, you're in the calendar, it's set in stone, and there's no moving that around, there's no shuffling it. That's because they are relying on that paycheck from that job for that week. They know when they get it done, they get paid, they move on to the next one. So they're incentivized to be in and out as quickly as possible. So that's kind of like on the tail end of this is another pro, is they tend to work faster. Really, we love them, but that's what we want, is we want people in, we want them to do the job, do it correctly, and be gone when it's done, and pay them their money. So those are the pros of subcontractors. Let's talk about the cons of using subcontractors for delivery. One huge one is no control over their schedule. You can get on the schedule in advance if you have that type of system set up like we do, where we schedule literally weeks in advance to make sure we have time blocked out. But if you don't do that and you have something pop up last minute, it can be a challenge to schedule subcontractors in a time crunch, which is why I talked about control earlier with employees. It's one of the biggest pros that you don't get on the subcontractor side, is you don't get to control their schedules. So that is a big con. The other thing is you tend to have gaps in scheduling, where if somebody gets done early and the next person isn't lined up perfectly that next day, there's going to be a gap in time where there's just nothing going on. So there'll be periods of high activity on your project, and then some periods of almost no or actually no activity on your project. So you'll see that up and down, that kind of interspersal of things going really fast and then just waiting for a second, and then going really fast and then waiting for a second. You'll see that with subcontractors as well. And then, I'd say the third thing is that with some general contractors, not necessarily all of them, but I do see this with some of them, it can actually lead to a feeling of not needing to supervise the subcontractors, which is a very risky thing. And if you see this, it's something you definitely have to have a conversation with your contractor about very quickly, because it can get out of hand really fast. And that's making sure that the subcontractors are supervised, not necessarily having someone there every day watching them and babysitting them, but at least from a distance, checking pictures, getting descriptions of what's been done, and keeping tabs on the project and making sure it's going correctly and according to the design specifications and scope of work that you laid out with your contractor in the beginning. And I'll tell you one other quick con from the contractor side is a lot of times subcontractors will seek a little bit of direction from the homeowner, and that can actually derail the design specifications to where, so they might say, oh, I told them I wanted the herringbone tile installation pattern versus the brick pattern, when in reality you signed on a brick pattern. And then they do the herringbone and they charge the client, the contractor, $1,500 extra for the herringbone shower, because that's really time consuming and very challenging, and it has to be perfect or it looks terrible. And all of a sudden the contractor says, herringbone? Wait a minute, what? If they're not supervising that, that can be a big problem between the contractor and the homeowner, as you can imagine. So those are kind of the cons of using subcontractors. So you can kind of see both. So the moment you've been waiting for, right? The big reveal. What do? At Home Love Construction, we use completely subcontractors for fulfillment. Whoa, what? As you could tell, probably as I was kind of describing it, I leaned more towards that anyways. And so for us, the biggest factor was the accountability and the quality of the work. When we made that change to exit our in-house employees to other fields, and we started taking on fully subcontractor delivered projects, our quality of work went from like a 7.5 to literally a 9.9. I mean, everything started coming in perfect. I was amazed at what people were able to do and how fast they were able to get it done. Budgets did have to go up a little bit, and we became not the least expensive contractor on the block anymore, which was fine. And most people actually, for our clients, it didn't actually bother them that much. They were okay with us being 10 to 15% more because the quality of their work was so amazing. And now we're able to supervise people, plan things out properly. And if there was an issue, we were able to take care of it easily by just having a service call with the subcontractor that's built into our agreement with them. So that really took our business to the next level. And so I would love to get your feedback. Leave a comment. What do you think is better? Do you think people should be using in-house employees? Do you think they should be using subcontractors? If you're a contractor, I definitely want to know what you think, because I love getting other contractors' opinion on this exact topic and hearing kind of their experiences. So comment below, subcontractors or employees, which do you prefer, or which do you prefer to see in a contractor? And then also, I do appreciate you watching this video. If you haven't already, be sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube and like us on Facebook. We are Home Love Construction in both of those places. Talk to you very soon. Be sure you hit the subscribe button. Thanks. Talk to you next vid. Peace.